We're back here on our special program, Jones and Company, and we are conducting an analysis of the news and events that took place in our country, the Bahamas, in 2018. Godfrey, in this story number 3 must be the doctors' strike.
Yes.
The first time in the history of the Bahamas, consultant physicians went on strike. And they stayed on strike for several days in the country, a week or so. And they were agitating for years for better working conditions, higher pay, but they said that the pay was not as important as certain conditions. They needed insurance and all of these things. And these doctors, the consultant physicians, got the support of junior doctors as well as nurses. And the government was forced to meet with them. But let's listen to the president of the Consultant Physicians Association, Dr. Loxley Monroe.
We have no pension plan, so upon retirement, literally, we would become almost like paupers. Now, they speak about fixing the air conditioning within 1 week. They speak about fixing the CAT scan in 3 months. They talk about fixing the roof after 3 years. That was working back to 2015.
Dr. Loxley Monroe talking about the grievances of the consultant physicians who are attached to the Public Hospitals Authority. And there are many people, Godfrey, who believe that the Public Hospitals Authority did a poor job.
I agree.
In handling this particular dispute.
Health is all our business. Health has no political tribe or color. Because when people get sick, you want the best. And I think that we have a outstanding cadre of medical professionals, physicians, nurses, attendants, and you and I had the opportunity to visit the critical care unit, the technology being employed there. And so you need competent people to provide competent service. And to get that competence, you got to pay for it. And I don't think what the doctors were asking for, the nurses, is exorbitant.
Yes.
I don't think it's exorbitant. They're not talking about no $300,000 a year.
Well, the Prime Minister had to get involved, and it was after meeting with the Prime Minister that the Hospitals Authority and the consultant physicians sat down and they hammered out a deal. They struck a deal, and the question is, why couldn't this have been done some months ago, or even some years ago?
Exactly.
And so successive governments
have failed in this.
Have failed in this particular regard because they did not treat these consultant physicians well.
And these our doctors, our doctors are world class, man. I can tell you.
Yes.
These guys can make a living anywhere.
Yes.
Anywhere in the world.
And many of them go beyond the call of duty, and they do so on a daily basis. The consultant physicians, I'm told, are supposed to work, 20 hours a week, and some of them do 80 or 100 hours a week. And so the good news is that they resolved the matter, and they are back at work. The junior doctors are unhappy over overtime pay or holiday pay. And the junior doctors, they are of the view that the government of the Bahamas has been breaking the law, that they as doctors work holiday without pay, and they've been working holiday and overtime for many years without pay.
Look at the line staff that we met.
Yes.
The kind of hours those men and women put in, even during the hurricane season, how they go to work and work sleep in the hospital just to be sure that the patient's got a clean sheet or to sleep on.
I like to mix the good with the bad, Godfrey, and the good news is that there is some improvement
Yes.
going on in terms of the infrastructure.
Yeah, the
in terms
critical
of
care
the-
unit is
the physical situation in the hospital, where there is improved X-ray equipment. There are many areas, many wards that have been overhauled. The children's ward, you see improvement in the critical care area. And you took the tour with me, and we thank the hospital's authority for giving us that tour so that we are able to speak objectively on these issues. And so while we lament the way doctors have been treated and the human resources problems that they have at the Princess Margaret Hospital and at the Rand in Grand Bahama, we can also give some kudos to the government for making an effort to improve the physical infrastructure in the hospital.
I think you must give a lot of credit to Mr. Robert Caron, who has done a tremendous job in trying to create this public-private partnership.
Yes.
Because it can't be all about the government.
Yes, but he's doing that with the blessing and
of the minister,
Dr. Dwayne Sands, who has been embattled for over many issues. But I think the intentions are pure, and they really want to have a well-run Princess Margaret Hospital. That's story number 3. Story number 2 is the Compendium of financial legislation, the bills, put before the Parliament of the Bahamas.
Our transformative growth agenda. Putting the nation's fiscal house in order is a clear prerequisite to a more buoyant private sector and stronger job growth, as well as securing sustainable improvements in the standard of living of our citizens. Perennial government deficits and an ever-ballooning burden of government debt pose a direct threat to a better life today and to prospects for future generations. Reflecting the importance that we attach to our commitment in this area, we announced in our very first budget that we would proceed with the elaboration of fiscal responsibility legislation and binding fiscal rules. The draft bill is presently out for public consultation and feedback. The purpose of this legislation will be to establish in law the principles and procedures of fiscal responsibility management, guide the formulation and implementation of fiscal policy objectives.
The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, and the European Union, they have put a tremendous amount of pressure on the government of the Bahamas. And they have threatened that the country would be blacklisted early in 2019 if the compendium of legislation, if they were not passed in the Parliament of the Bahamas. Well, there is one that is giving the government some problems, and I believe that there's a compromise on this one, dealing with non-profit organizations, wanting non-profit organizations to make certain declarations and to show their books and to account to the registrar in the country. But the Bahamas government has been under pressure from the year 2000 by these organizations outside the country to comply and to comport with some extraneous rules that they bring to bear on governments like the government of the Bahamas, and they continue to move the goalpost every single time the Bahamas government complies with whatever they desire.
Well, from my vantage point, this is a case of extreme discrimination. Discrimination. the OECD and the EU are discriminating against independent countries like the Bahamas. And they're turning a blind eye to their territories, the British Virgin Islands, the Cayman, the Turks and Caicos, the Channel Islands, Guernsey, all right?
But I saw a piece, the Minister of Finance in Bermuda has been complaining bitterly about the pressure being brought to bear on Bermuda. And so the Bahamas is not alone in this. Barbados.
You anything from the Channel Islands?
No, but the problem is that all of these countries should come together, ought to have been together and ought to have taken a stance on the international stage. And I think there is a need for improved public relations on the part of these countries collectively. Because the financial services sector in all of these countries are being decimated
Yes.
by the OECD and the EU. And they, the actions of these organizations, they are impacting the economies of these countries. And we are middle-class people in the Bahamas, for instance,
Are in jeopardy.
are in jeopardy. They've lost jobs.
Yes. Yeah.
And it has had a deleterious effect on the economy of the Bahamas. And it has caused a tremendous amount of strain on the business community. Pressure has been brought to bear by people who are doing normal banking activities in some of these commercial banks.
I think more than anything else, this financial service dilemma we're in has probably done more to decrease the standard of living of many Bahamians in terms of the availability to disposable income and et cetera, because in many of these individuals who worked in the financial services sector were highly paid.
It's more than that, Godfrey. It has to do with the hassle of doing business, the hassle of banking.
Well, I was looking at it from I was looking at it from the offshore perspective,
Yes.
not so much from the domestic perspective, because the domestic perspective, Brenda, I hold the government responsible.
Well, you know,
I hold the government. See, the government, all our governments have allowed these foreign-owned banks, right, to take jobs out of the Bahamas and put them in these CARICOM states. But the employment is being created in the Bahamas because the Bahamas is the profit center.
well, banks do what is in their interest. And Godfrey, it is in the interest of some of these banks that are headquartered in Canada to do business outside the Bahamas because they are about saving money.
Yes, but I know you know
They're about
individuals.
saving money.
You know individuals in the Bahamas who've been trying to get bank licenses.
Yeah, but that's a different thing.
No, it's the same
That
thing.
is a totally
No,
different
we need-
question.
we need-
Whether or not we need local
Yes, we do.
Banks that are owned by Bahamians,
Bahamians.
and there are two banks in this country now.
Commonwealth Bank and Fidelity.
Yes.
Yes.
That are with significant. You forget the Bank of the Bahamas.
Yes. And
right.
the credit unions.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so there are Bahamian-owned banks. We need more. We need more financial institutions owned by Bahamians.
Bahamians.
Yes?
Yes.
But you cannot blame an international
No.
bank for taking business outside the
no,
Bahamas if it is in their interest to do so. And as much as we hate it in the Bahamas, it seems to be in their overall interest. They look at the bottom line,
Yes, you can't blame them.
right?
But I think we need to take steps to secure our employment and to secure our finances, our national finances.
I think the Central Bank of the Bahamas, Godfrey, has not been doing a good job in terms of regulating banks in this country and standing up for Bahamians.
Yes.
Because it has been, like I said, it is almost discouraging for people to do normal banking
You know, we live-
in our country. And the cost of doing banking is high. The cost of services is far too high.
You know, we live in a country where you have thousands and thousands of people who, like me, my age group, people are not computer literate. They don't know nothing about going to no bank machine and doing this thing. They're used to going with their passbook.
Yeah, well, you know, that is a thing of the past because they have you now pulling and screaming into the 21st century. And so you better get used to it because they have changed their practices, and I don't believe the central bank is doing very much to assist. The government, talking about banking, this whole issue of dormant accounts
Yes.
has been on the top of the table in terms of conversation in many quarters in our country. And many Bahamians are unhappy that dormant accounts are being sent to the taken out of the central bank, and the Ministry of Finance or the Public Treasury will now have these dormant accounts. And for many years, they were held by the Central Bank of the Bahamas. And that is not sitting well with a whole lot of people.
It's a big issue.
Yes. Story number one, Godfrey, is the increase in value-added tax. Up to 12% now. The 60% increase in value-added tax that has impacted the overall economy of the Bahamas.
Everyone.
And it is believed generally that the increase in VAT has caused the economy of the Bahamas to remain in stagnation, and as a result, there is no growth in the overall domestic economy. Now, no matter what the IMF is saying with respect to the performance of the government, and they obviously are pleased from certain announcements made by the IMF in the fiscal performance of the government of the Bahamas, Bahamians are not impressed.
You see, the IMF speaks with two terms, you know. The IMF has been saying the Bahamas economy has been in decline for the last 18 years. And the IMF comes here every year to advise the government.
But in recent times, in recent weeks, the IMF gave the government some good marks in terms of the trajectory of the economy, how the economy is moving. They seem very pleased with the performance of the government on fiscal matters. Now, while that might be so, the cold hard fact of the matter is that the government is getting increased revenue because they increase VAT.
Yes.
And with the increase in VAT, it has caused a tremendous pressure on the business community.
You see,
and with the cost of electricity, the cost of doing business has gone up by 60%.
You see, my fundamental difference is this, right? Increasing the government revenue is one thing, right? Expanding the economy is another.
Yes.
They don't tie together. You can increase the government revenue, but your economy ain't expanding.
Yes.
And that's the dilemma we're in. The economy is not expanding, Mr. Jones.
The economy is not expanding, and there are many Bahamians who feel the pain, as you suggested earlier. The rate of unemployment is still in decline. We do not see...
The rate of employment is in decline, to me.
The rate of employment,
is in decline.
yes, is in decline. The rate of unemployment is steadily higher. And quite frankly, I think it is understated. There are a tremendous amount of people who are discouraged workers. They just stop looking for jobs. And this past Christmas, no matter what people are saying, was a very slow one for many merchants in the Bahamas. Many merchants will tell you that they did not see the kind of business that they would have seen in years past.
You know, you and I have a mutual friend. And he told me yesterday he had $100,000. And he said, what you should invest it in? I said, I can't tell you. I can't tell you what to do with $100,000 right now.
But I hear you with that, but you know, generally speaking, Godfrey, the economy of the Bahamas is not firing on
It's not.
all cylinders. As a matter of fact, it is quite distressing for a whole lot of people, and people are skeptical. They are afraid. Businessmen are afraid because, as I said, the cost of doing business is extremely high. The government is constantly in search of revenue and is bringing tremendous pressure to bear on businesses throughout the country
I would have
to
thought,
pay up.
I would have thought, right, that the cost of the government doing business would have decreased in view of the fact that the government has laid off a substantial number of people. All right? So that would indicate to me that the government's salary should have been substantially reduced, right? And with the increased revenue, you know, there should be some little, you know, some money available for some development projects to put people back to work.
Well, the bottom line is that the government must find a way to stimulate the domestic economy, to give incentives
For the private sector.
to businessmen and women in the private sector so that the economy can grow. With that, we've come to this segment of our program where, Godfrey, we remember those who have fallen over the last year. Many Bahamians who started 2018 with us, their voices are lost in death. And so in our segment here in memoriam, Bradley Roberts, Basil Sands, Chief Justice Stephen Isaacs, former Cabinet Minister Fenton Nemore, former Cabinet Minister Teresa Moxie Ingram, cultural icon James Catlin, musician Patricia Bazard, and her sister Audrey Wright, noted civil engineer George V. Cox, former Senator Talita Strawn, Mrs. Zoe Maynard, Lady Maynard, Pastor Ed Allen, Sir Durward Knowles, David Johnson, Sammy Gardner, Maxwell Turner, Gina Morley, Reverend Andrew Stewart, Bishop Joseph Swan, Frankie Sweeting, Sheila Roll, Ronnie Thomas. May their souls rest in peace. That brings us to the end of our program. Our analysis of the stories and events of 2018. Godfrey, it's a pleasure working with you.
Thank you. Another year.
Another year.
And we hope that 2019 will be a year of human flourishing, and that our economy would bounce back, and we would have a country where people will again have hope for a better future, a country where our young people would have the aspirations to stay and develop it, rather than seeking to go elsewhere.
Thank you very much. And we thank you, our faithful listeners and advertisers, for your support of our efforts here in the Jones Communications Network over the last year. And on behalf of all of my colleagues here in Jones Communications, in the Bahama Journal, Love 97 FM, and JCN Television, we thank you so very much for watching, listening, and reading us over the last year. And we wish for you and yours all of the blessings of 2019. Good evening, everyone.